If you're considering getting this Aqua Pro liquid patch, stay tuned. I'm going to actually be answering a few of these questions here on my air mattress. And if you have a hole in another one of your inflatables, this is still very valuable information that you'll want to check out. So I have a air mattress that has been leaking, and the first thing you need to do is figure out where your leak is so that you know where to apply this liquid patch. And what I did was I just put some Dawn dish soap in a spray bottle and sprayed it all over my inflated air mattress. Then once it's inflated, you spray it down, and if everything goes correctly, you should start to see some air bubbles popping up where the air is leaking out. And you can see that in this footage here. I was spraying it all over, and it was very obvious. You can see where it was starting to bubble up. Yeah, with dish soap, you might have some little bubbles like all over, but if it's like an actual leak, you'll have like a lot of bubbles piling up, or like a big bubble. And I wanted to note, you do need to make sure that whatever inflatable you have, that it's made out of PU or PVC. It's not going to work if it's nylon. And this doesn't just work for tiny holes. You could actually use it if you have like a bigger hole. They do include a little mesh in the box, and that is what you'll use if you have a hole that is 2 inches or larger. But in my case, I did not need to do that because I had just like little tiny holes, and it just so happened that mine were along the seams of my air mattress. And a lot of people may be wondering if you can even use a patch on a seam. But because this is a liquid and it does like kind of fuse with the PVC, work perfectly on the seams. But yes, you can see me go through the steps here. You want to, first go ahead, find your holes with the bubbles. Then you want to make sure you remember where the holes are, because in the next step, you need to apply the liquid patch while it's deflated, and you don't want to forget or lose your spot. So what I did is I dried my mattress off, and I used a marker to mark the spots. So it's going to depend. If you have a big hole or a tear, you won't need to mark it because it'll be obvious. But if you have tiny ones that you can't see and it was hard to find, you'll need to go ahead and mark those off. Once they're marked, make sure it is dry, and you go ahead and completely deflate the inflatable. The patch needs to be applied while it's in that deflated space so that it can fuse properly. Once it's like fully inflated, it like expands in a way that it's just not going to go correctly. So once you have it deflated and dried and you know where to apply the liquid patch, you'll want to go ahead and do that. It does say to follow the directions and not spread or apply like a thin layer. You don't want to brush it out, flatten it, or do anything really. You would just want to squeeze it from the tube directly onto your hole or marked spot, and you don't want to do any flattening, smoothing out, or brushing. Nothing that will cause it to be a thinner layer than it's naturally coming out of the tube. And just to note, it is cool the tube has on the cap, it has something to open it up. In case you're not knowing how to open that up, you just turn the cap over, pop it onto the sealed end, and it will open. And you can actually do quite a few repairs out of one tube. I have 3 holes, as you see, I marked on this mattress, and I was able to do those 3 spots with this tube and still had, I would say, like 80% of the tube left. After you apply your liquid patch, you do need to allow it to dry and cure, and that does take 2 hours. So put it somewhere safe and ventilated and allow it to cure. I just put it in my living room with a lot of fans and had some windows open to make sure we had lots of good ventilation. And then after 2 hours, I reinflated my air mattress to test and see if this actually worked. And to be honest, it mostly did. You can see here, this is now the test after I have applied the liquid patch, and 2 of the 3 holes were repaired. But you can see here that the third one is still making bubbles. But I mean, that's going to happen, especially depends on what kind of holes you have. I marked this with a marker, but there's a good chance I wasn't spreading the liquid over the actual holes properly. This is on a seam and they're super tiny. I can't see them. So it was my best guess as I was applying it. And I'm guessing maybe I just didn't get to the right holes. So if that happens to you, you'll just want to apply it again. Take another look at where those bubbles are coming from and make sure that you have a consistent layer of the liquid patch over the whole thing with no breaks in it at all. So make sure it's smooth and it's like a continuous gliding of a continuous layer of the liquid patch. Because any breaks in that, you're not going to get a good secure patch. So what I did is I dried it off, I deflated, and I applied the patch again. So that might happen sometimes, but because it did actually seal the other two leaks, it does tell me that the product works, that the problem was mostly with my placing. So after I went ahead and I reapplied the patch and tested again, I did finally get the hole covered and it was working. So yeah, make sure you're marking your spots. It might take a couple of tries if there's super tiny holes that you just can't see. But overall, the product does seem to work and you get a lot of use out of one tube. I can't say exactly how many because it's going to depend on the size of your hole, whether you're doing like a big hole or a big tear or tiny things. But you can definitely get multiple uses out of one tube depending on how big your patch is. So I hope this was helpful. I hope my experience with this helps you get the best results possible with your own leak and you're able to salvage some inflatables. This is definitely a great solution versus throwing them out. And thanks for tuning in.